Moons of madness! Why am I burdened with such incompetence? I've been looking forward to this one. Happy Towel Day, by the way. Yes, we continue on with the Key to Time season of the Fourth Doctor, and we get to the Pirate Planet, written by the one, the only, Douglas Adams. Author of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, amongst other things. I love Douglas Adams. I was a Douglas Adams fan long before I was a Doctor Who fan. I adore Douglas Adams' work. I adore his sense of humor. I adore his writing. I just love his stuff. And this was actually one of the first classic Doctor Who stories I sought out when I first started getting in or trying to get into classic era Doctor Who. And it was one of the first ones that I thought was genuinely good because I've talked about this before. It's been a while, but when I first tried to get into classic, I had a real hard time overlooking the jankiness of the production. That was real difficult for me. I've largely gotten over that. I'm not going to say it's never a hurdle. Sometimes it is. But it kind of depends on the specifics. I'm mostly over that at this point, but watching this one for the first time, I liked it immediately because Douglas Adams' fingerprints are all over it. And that just makes me happy and makes me smile. And rewatching it now for the sake of a review, because I haven't seen it for a few years now, this is still really good. This is exactly what I want out of Douglas Adams writing for Doctor Who. It's not quite peak, because peak is City of Death, which, if those of you who are new here aren't aware, I consider to be the best classic era story, period. But that's peak Douglas Adams. This is pretty good, though. It's got some nifty, mind-bending sci-fi concepts behind it. It's got wonderful dialogue. It's got great little touches of just weirdness. Just like, okay, sure, why not? I guess that's the thing that's going to happen now. And I have a lot of fun with this. So, before we get into all the stuff that I like, I will mention that while I think Romana is a little bit better in this one than she was in the Rebus operation, she is still, unfortunately, largely still doing the know-it-all shtick. Like, it's hard to say where the line is, the point at which it goes from, that's kind of working, to, oh, okay. But I'll tell you a scene and the point at which it crossed that line. So there's some point at which she is captured at gunpoint by the minions of the villain. Oh, just quick note, like the minions, the random guards in this, first of all, some of the worst death acting in the history of Doctor Who. They get shot and they just kind of keel over, and like the guns, they're not even faking that there's recoil. And so there's just these random lights going where they're supposedly shooting, and there's this really wimpy sound to them. But even setting all that aside, real fetishy, real kink, the outfits they have these guys in. But anyway, she gets held at gunpoint. She's going to be taken to, where all the bad guy leaders are, the lair, effectively. And initially what's working is she's like, oh, well, let's get going then. She just gets into this air car. I think they even call it that. And she's like, all right, well, we don't want to keep them waiting. And, just sort of this slightly oddly peppy attitude for the situation. And I'm like, okay, that's where her attitude's working. But then they're in the process of flying, and she's talking about how she once had this a model air car very similar to this, and you could increase its fuel efficiency if you dipped it, and they fade out on that as they're flying off. And that's where it crosses over into, okay, that's just annoying know-it-all. And while I can't define that line, that was where it is. So she does cross it a bit in this. Some scenes work with her, but there were more scenes of her still having that irritating know-it-all aspect to her than I remember there being in this. That having been said, she is starting to build a solid rapport with the Doctor. Once they get past the initial, well, I've read the manual for the TARDIS, and you disregard so much of it. Once they get through that kind of trite initial scene between the two of them, that they're starting to build a good rapport, and that is at least coming through. So I would still say that this is stronger than the Rebus operation, but not by as much as I had hoped in regards to her in particular. So they are trying to find the planet Calufrax, and they land at the correct space coordinates at the correct point in time, and they land on a planet, but it's the wrong planet. It's not Calufrax. It's something else. Which, first of all, great starting premise. I love that. Like, we are in the right place, we're at the right time, but something that should be here is not. That's just a cool starting premise. And there is kind of a mystery is not quite the right word, because a mystery, in theory, the audience could solve for themselves. And again, it's one of those slightly mind-bendy sci-fi concepts that I'm not sure too many people would have jumped to on their own. But you do get the unrolling, the unfurling of this plan of what it is actually going on. And what we find out about this planet that is where Calufrax should be, it has, on the ground level, it's kind of primitive. They have air cars, but they don't have space travel, and they don't really seem to understand interstellarness at all. They refer to the stars as just the lights in the sky. Their main thing is just like, we're all very rich and we're well kept for, and the captain just announces a new golden age of prosperity, and then the mines fill up with precious minerals again, and we're all rich, and it's wonderful. And just nobody asking questions of, how does this work? What is it we're actually doing? The Doctor has a phenomenal line. Going through with one of the supporting characters, the mines just refill again. And the guy goes to the Doctor and is like, is that wrong? Oh, well, it's an economic miracle. Of course it's wrong. Doctor Who. The Doctor has been anti-capitalist for a long time. Don't tell me otherwise. I love that line. It's an economic miracle. Of course it's wrong. Oh, it's good. But what we end up ultimately finding out is the planet that they are on, the people who are running the planet, the captain being the initial one we deal with, and there's some other stuff going on behind him. He has these massive dematerialization engines that move the entire planet that they're on. Now, the planet that they're on is hollow, and it shows up around a smaller planet, like enclosing a fist, and then it crunches down that smaller planet and mines it for all its resources, its precious minerals, whatever is worth having, until it's nothing but a tiny condensed husk of what it once was. And that's just a cool idea. That's a cool notion. Now, the captain, this is a character that, there's a balance to be struck with a character like this, because he's a big, bellowing, blustering villain. Literally, his first line is what I said to open this. Moons of madness. For the record, Big Finish, if you have not done a prequel involving this captain, please do, about the relationship between him and Mr. Fibuli. I'll come back to that in a second. And call it Moons of Madness. Please, have that one for free. I want it. I want it quite badly. But in any case, so the captain, he is a cyborg. He has half, it's an interesting piece. It's obviously just a helmet piece, but he's got sort of a cybernetic eye, and he's got this piece that comes across his upper mouth that looks a little bit like a mustache, but not quite. And he's missing an arm, so he's got one arm that's just got these it's kind of a Swiss Army knife of tech, but also it's Doctor Who, so it's not that impressive, but that's the idea of it anyway. But here's the kicker. He has a mechanical parrot on his shoulder. A killer mechanical parrot on his shoulder. And the thing I did not know I wanted in my life, yes, there is a fight between K9, the mechanical dog, and this mechanical parrot. Ah! I love this thing. I love this thing so much. But he seems blustering and buffoonish almost. He's too loud to be in charge, if that makes sense. Like I've quoted the general notion before. Somebody who's truly in control doesn't need to yell because they know they're in charge. Someone who has a lot of self-doubt that they are actually in charge, they have to yell a lot. And that, to me, very frequently diminishes a villain when they yell too much. But I'll tell you what I like about him is he kind of has going for him a similar thing to Zaphod Beeblebrox in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books, which is that he has a very carefully curated image that people have of him, that he projects. And in his case, it's violent, it's bellowing, it's thuggish. He's quite smart. And the Doctor figures that out pretty quick. That this whole thing, while, there's that's genuinely kind of a part of him, but that's not all he is. He's genuinely smart, and he emphasizes this other aspect of his personality to hide the fact that he's smart. And I just like that. I just like that overall. So I mentioned Mr. Fibuli. He's kind of the right hand for the captain, and I adore their dynamic. Like, initially, when you first see him, you think he's the standard sort of sniveling toady, like, oh, I hope that you do not obliterate me when I deliver you bad news, because he is the kind of guy who will kill somebody for delivering him bad news. But the thing is, as time goes on, you realize that their dynamic is actually quite well worn. And there's like a point where the captain says something like, Mr. Fibuli, I shall allow you to live another day. Oh, thank you, sir. Your kindness is immense, and there's almost a little hint of sarcasm, like the captain saying I'll obliterate you later is almost like their way of just going, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm okay. How are you? Like, they've been doing this a long time. And there's even there's little hints that there is genuine affection of a kind between the captain and Mr. Fibuli, and I'm inclined to think it goes both ways. I'll just say it. I ship it. I like their dynamic. It's good. It's good stuff. There is, of course, more to it than that, and I found myself wondering if the next layer deep, sort of the additional thing, what's going on even behind the captain, because the captain gets introduced very early on. I found myself wondering, was that necessary, or is it because Doctor Who kind of needs a later reveal? And I do think it works. I think it adds enough new wrinkles, and also by this point, if the captain works for you as a character, you've started to develop enough affection for him that you kind of need a more unabashedly wicked villain to rap out on. So I think it provides that, and I think it mostly works. I think and I'm not going to go into detail on this because honestly, even mentioning that there's kind of another villain who crops up later is already a little bit spoilery, but I don't want to go into specifics on it. But just recognizing the value in that, because by the end, I'm just kind of liking the captain, and that's a tough needle to thread. If you're not going to do something like the Master where you're expecting them to come back at a later date. So I think it made sense for the story to have that second layer of villainy to sort of wrap up with on the tail end. I think it could have worked without it, but it does still ultimately benefit from it. So ultimately I decided, I'm okay with that. And as far as other stuff goes, we have other weirdness. We have this sort of psychic gestalt cult, the Mentiads, which the Doctor hears about first, and then everyone's running into, oh, excuse me, are you the Mentiads? And they kind of blast him with psychic powers, like, well, you look like Mentiads to me, and they just blast him again. And just some of the dialogue, especially between the Doctor and the Captain, when the two of them talk, it's great. The Doctor knows just how to wind him up because, as I said, the Doctor's kind of already parsed him out and knows this guy's smarter than he acts. But also, the Doctor takes genuine issue, genuine offense to what this man is doing. And seeing Tom Baker get indignant, get angry, we honestly don't see it all that often. But when we do, it's good. It's good, and he gets to do that here. I think it's the third episode we get that. It's good. It's good stuff. This one's a 4-parter, for the record. There is like one aspect that I have found myself wondering since the first time I watched it, and I watched it again with kind of an eye to see if there was an answer to that, and there really isn't. This is a bit of a spoilery thing. Not too big though, because it's really just an aspect of the key to time thing, which, as I mentioned before, is not really so much an overarching story thing as just a vague connective tissue. But, they were trying to find Califrax to find the next part of the key to time. Well, it turns out the entire planet of Califrax was the next part of the key to time. So they take the now condensed down planet, and that turns into the part of the key to time that they wanted. What I have always wondered, though, how are they meant to retrieve it if it hadn't been crushed down by the pirate planet? How was that supposed to work? I've always wondered that. But it's one of those things where, like, the contrivance of the story sort of fixes what would otherwise be a problem. Like, oh, we don't have to worry about that because this thing happened. That means that it's not a problem anymore. Like, yeah, but that thing wasn't supposed to happen. So how is it supposed to work? I'm still kind of curious. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't break the story by any means, but it's so quirky and clever and fun and ridiculous. Lots of play with the jelly babies, and also licorice all sorts. So it's not even just the jelly babies in this one, but just good, fun moments and dynamics and quips and like I said, just that little touch of Douglas Adams getting a little more mind-bendy with his sci-fi concepts than a lot of classic Who tends to do, which was another thing that he added that I think always helped the show, in addition to his quirk and his humor, which speaks to me very, very well. But the Pirate Planet, this still holds up. This still holds up really well. I dig the heck out of this. What do you think about this classic Who? What are you doing for Towel Day? Do you know where your towel is? It is the most useful thing in the galaxy. You should know. You need to be the kind of hoopy fruit who knows where their towel is. But whatever your thoughts might be, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. Those all help as well. But don't worry too much about it. We take a relaxed attitude around here so you can come on back next time you need a break. Now to give my thanks to my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfula, Badasalida, Oliver B., Tarak, the Thing That Goes Doink in the Anime, Jean Foray, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Melinda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Bernabi Likes the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, White Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Toka Blahuvian, Pal Barabajoggle, and Mara G. Thank you so much for your support. You can get your name said, maybe even correctly, in the Patreon support tiers. Also, it helps me feed these little buggers.